What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale, your host of Destiny. Kind of like the Indiana Pacers might be the team of Destiny. I am joined by the OnlyFans content creator of Destiny, Mort Jensen, who is also famous for his work at the NBA podcast, Yahoo Sports, as well as Forbes. We are here to talk about, you've listened to the game recaps, you've done that by now. We're here to talk big picture stuff. We have one overarching question we're going to talk with about this series, Thunder Pacers. Then Mort and I are going to get into each of our biggest single takeaways from game one, and then either our biggest question or suggested adjustments moving forward into game two and beyond. But before we belly flop in, Mort, how the heck are you?
You know what? I was doing pretty well. And then I realized moments ago that the last time you and I recorded, we recorded 2 episodes, not one. So you sent me over 2 files, and for some reason, because I am very sleep deprived and because it's very late in the season, I was like, oh, did I record once or twice with Dan? Oh, I'm sure it was just one. And so I only uploaded one of the 2, and the one I didn't upload was the freaking NBA Finals preview. That's the one I forgot about to upload. So, Dan, I'm doing well, but I'm also an idiot.
Now? Yeah, you might, or you're trying to get a job at ESPN. You went right to the off-season rumor stuff,
right?
And just skipped right over the basketball.
It's all about Tom Thibodeau, apparently. God. So no, doing well. I'm just I'm tired, sir. And like I will say this, I love what we've seen from game one. I want this to go as far as we can. But that light at the end of the tunnel that says off season, it's starting to look big. And man, here I'm coming.
I love the finals because of the breaks we get in between games. And I know at the end of this, like my life during the draft and free agency / trade season is just like, it's a dead, what we do is entirely a dead sprint. Like, I just want to make that clear. It takes a lot of time, very little sleep, and we're not doing anything noble, so don't feel bad for us. We're covering a fucking game, but people care about this game a ton, so you have to work hard. But that around the trade deadline and then immediately after the NBA Finals are like just the 2 most, and maybe like when the season first kicks off, are just like the most frenetic times in my life. And so I kind of bask in the finals while also going through the existential dread of shifting into full-on off-season mode.
Yep. And the thing is, our jobs, they don't really end by the end of the finals, because then we have to do draft stuff, then we have to do free agency. And I've honestly stayed out of summer league coverage, and that's been intentional for the most part because I just can't. Like, there's a limit. There's a limit to how many months out of the year I can just sort of get myself up to that level. So Summer League, you're on your own.
I try to take it easy for a couple weeks in August, but then after that, it's like right back into like we're trying to do our team by team look aheads here. And then like as soon as September rolls around, like even if you were just to really go by the NBA calendar, it's August and like a little bit of July is this, like once September rolls around, it's like, oh, like we're going to start talking about training camp soon and going into all the previews. And then, oh, is there going to be a trade like 3 seconds before training camp opens that no one saw coming? So
I'll actually tell you something. I'll tell you something because I felt the same way, but I've broken the pattern this year. We've actually booked a trip to Malta in September, and that was actually part because I want to break that pattern. I want to use September as a month off as well. I really do.
Normalize taking September off. Yeah. Get that Giannis to the Knicks trade done before September,
right?
For Mort's sake,
for sure.
What we're saying here. Let's dive in here. So I want to start with just this question that I think we've referenced it a couple times throughout our playoff coverage. You and I, Grant and I as well, and people started to talk about. But I really kind of wanted to dig into where after game one of the finals, we saw the Thunder go 11 players deep, and the Pacers go 10 players deep. And it wasn't, I think Kenrich Williams played or was it AJ? Like they played these small spurts, but there were, on both sides, at least 7 players who logged 15 or more minutes. And it used to be, the thought process was, and still is, I'm saying used to, that you need to shorten your rotations during the playoffs to limit the amount of weaknesses. And then it's just, well, you want to rely on your best players. I am wondering, so I'm going to frame the question like this. What we're seeing from Indiana in Oklahoma City, the start of kind of that next trend. Remember when the Warriors had Draymond Green at the 5, it was a small ball or like going with 5 out? Or is this just a function of these two teams play fast. Their style is so demanding, and so you don't necessarily want anyone playing a crap ton of minutes, so you had to build your team this way. And the final thing before I throw it to you, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander played, I think it was like 39 minutes and 34 seconds in game one. That's like a lot of minutes on its face, but for us to exit game one, that was determined by 1 point, and say that no one logged 40 minutes in that game, I'm not even sure if Tom Thibodeau is still alive if he hears that little factoid.
So here's the thing. I don't think it's just, for teams that run a lot. I think the NBA has finally caught up to the fact that defense is so more labor intensive now than it used to be. And look, it's also why the biggest pet peeve for my what
It's just funny that you're saying that when the discourse is that no one plays defense.
That's the thing. That's what I wanted to attack here, because I hate when people say that. It's bullshit. Like, people look back and say, "Oh, they really played defense in the '80s." No, they played defense from 20 feet in. Now you start your defense from 40, 45 feet out. The labor intensity of defense has just gone up like sky high, and it seems like NBA teams are finally embracing, let's dial it down in terms of giving our guys 35, 36, 37 minutes per game. Kenny Atkinson is a guy who I think is a brilliant example of embracing that culture as well in Cleveland. And having depth resolves that issue a great deal. Now, I will say, to answer the question, is depth the next NBA trend? Good depth is the next NBA trend.
Whoa.
Because, you can... Are we really sure the Charlotte Hornets are is their depth good enough to make anything noteworthy? Well, probably not.
I've grown to call it functional depth, to where it's something that will translate into the playoffs is kind of the lens that I'm looking at this question through.
Exactly. And to answer that question, it's absolutely a new trend. It's kind of weird when we think back on it, why it's never really been a trend, if you catch my drift, because it always kind of made sense to have more guys come off the bench and make plays. Like, it's common logic. If you kind of squeeze everything together and you play 5 or 6 guys, well, not 5, but 6 or 7 guys at the most, they are going to get absolutely knackered at the end. And you need someone to come in and absorb minutes. And we've often thought about, finals and even championship winning team where we've looked at certain guys and gone, why didn't that guy play? And everyone has kind of said, oh, well, they shortened the rotation. And we kind of just embraced that and bought that on the surface of it and said, okay, cool, as if that was just a valid argument. So I love that we're seeing this. It makes sense again to me that we kind of look at this and go, oh, more players are a good thing? Yeah, absolutely.
I have 3 quick points I want to make on it
that
I think just dovetail nicely with what you said, because I totally agree. One of the points is, I think that something like an inflection point with the Jason Tatum injury and just other injuries we've seen, that you're never going to necessarily know the root cause of these things, but Jason Tatum has been one of the most durable and available players in the league since he entered it. And you see something like that. You see just what feels like these influx of soft tissue injuries. And I think it's going to become more of a priority of, even if you want to look at it through the regular season lens, it's not just having bodies on the roster you could throw out there, but that can be effective innings eaters, some of which will translate into the postseason. The second point that I think is a big deal, I'm also wondering if the way that the collective bargaining agreement in the era of aprons is now structured, where that you're going to have that the best way to build a team is, well, we can have 2 really top-heavy salary guys, but it now increases the necessity for, whether you have a bunch of top-end salary guys or not, of we need to try and find these flyers or guys that could contribute, and maybe we're going to give out more role player contracts. And I think that could be maybe an unintended consequence that's actually not so bad relative to what we've seen, where I think a lot of this stuff, the unintended consequences have been not so great. And I think the other thing here, why I think it's going to become a trend, and this is something that I think is really cool, is that once you get to the playoffs, if you just have more buttons to push, more styles that you're able to adapt to and play within, it makes for a more entertaining product to me. And 2, it just increases your chances of winning. And I think what we're seeing with the Pacers and the Thunder, to bring it back to them, are 2 teams that have been able to adapt at every single turn. And we thought from right out of the gate, and we'll eventually talk about whether some of these were the right calls, but it's, oh, like this might be a Benedict Mathurin series now. And Mark Daigneault is going to change. He changed up his starting lineup for game one. And that's, you try stuff, maybe it doesn't work, but the other team is able to counter and you're countering back. And I think depth's an important part of that, because if you get too pigeonholed into one way of playing, and we saw that with, just because they were one of the most recent teams eliminated, like Minnesota was pretty, like they had really like meaty depth, like top heavy, like going 7 or 8 reliable guys deep. The Knicks didn't go that deep. And like everyone was calling for these changes, but there was really a limited number of changes they could make. If you think that more of DeLon Wright or Landry Shamet was going to be the difference between them winning the title and not winning the title, I would respectfully disagree. And so I'm very interested to see, one, I guess maybe we could see front offices and ownership uses as an excuse not to pay really good players as much or stars as much, where it's like, no, we got to spread out the wealth across the rest of the roster to make it more manageable, especially when it comes to trades for them. But I think overall, what we're kind of seeing is, and I feel like we've seen elements with other teams. You mentioned Kenny Atkinson, what Cleveland did this year.
Yeah.
They ended up injured anyway. So you can't sit here and say, oh, that's the best way to protect your players. But even Houston, and like they were pretty, I think, what was it? Fred VanVleet played 40 minutes a game in that first round series. But like they had 8 guys that were around 20 minutes per game. And when you watched them, and you could argue this is also a bug, not just a feature, there wasn't ever one player you thought they couldn't live without. And I don't think that's the future. I think that's more of a bug. That's why Fred VanVleet has to play so much, because their offense was so dependent on him. But I think we've started to see the breadcrumbs laid elsewhere of that these teams are, OKC, they didn't stumble into this. They're like a very special case study, but like the Pacers meticulously built and preserved this team. And I think that, the NBA is still a copycat league for all the changes we've seen. Maybe that miming doesn't last as long because everything feels like it's changing so fast. But I really think we're going to see kind of a throwback, or not a throwback, an emphasis just on depth in general. And finally, would just be, I think we might even see it when we're talking about these trades in the offseason. If the Knicks interested in Kevin Durant, unless you're going to be able to get him for Karl Anthony Towns plus a minimum contract, you got to think, we were shallow this year. We're going to give up like OG Anunoby and Mitchell Robbins, and we're just going to make ourselves even shallower to get a 37-year-old. I think that might also be why you see teams like the Nuggets aren't going to be as aggressive in turning multiple contracts into one, even if those contracts aren't unplayable. Good, bad, I don't know. Right. But I do think depth overall is becoming more in vogue, and I think that we're going to see more teams lean into it. And it's to your point. It's not just names on the roster that you've heard of. It's depth, playable bodies that teams want to translate into the postseason.
I agree with everything you just said, and I want to add to it by saying, to fans listening in, yes, like we are probably not going to see a lot of these consolidation trades unless it's a star. When it's a star, I think we can throw all of that out the window, because then you trade multiple players to get like a major difference maker in there and you figure something out later. But you're absolutely right. You're no longer going, oh, let's get rid of 2 top 10 players on our team to get a top 7 guy in, which we've seen before. Like, no, I definitely think that is something that's even more of a discussion now before you pull the trigger. And it's certainly a more interesting way to build out a roster to me as well. Does this mean the Bulls are actually on? Were they right? We just won 8 to 10 good players.
But you still need, I think the Pacers.
I was kidding. The Bulls are not right, Dan.
You need great players, and the Bulls have 2 great players in Nikola Vucevic and Amadis Buzelis. Like they've decided, So the Bulls are like. The Bulls are in that, like, I feel like they aspire to be the good version of the Hornets from like 10 or so years ago, to where it's like the Kemba Walker, Al Jefferson team that was pretty deep, but like you knew it wasn't really going to go anywhere. And I think that's what the Bulls aspire to be.
Yeah.
Poor Bulls fans like Mort, who is a genuine Bulls
fan.
No.
I'm gone. I thought that was funny though, because I actually saw some people like make that connection. I was just like, you're kind of forgetting the most important thing. Like, you still need the MVP caliber players. You still need the all NBAers, and Josh Giddey ain't it.
Portland's a perfect example. We caught a lot of shit last summer because we said they were secretly stacked, and we noted not with like great players that are going to get them to the playoffs, but this team is deep and like they can find an identity or do some damage. Lo and behold, they did exactly that. Like their midseason turnaround, having a top 5 defense for basically half the year, but you still need, I would argue, you need like, not that I don't want to call the Pacers the bare minimum, but like you need even the Thunder, I guess you could say, like because J Dub and Chet Holmgren seem to wax and wane, you need one transcendent guy that could be
Right.
second team All NBA at minimum in any given year, but preferably you need 2 of those guys.
Yeah.
Now, I've randomized the order in which who's going to go first with their takeaways. So let's see who's coming up first. I believe this is you, Mort.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about the most coming out of game 1?
I mean, look, Indiana is known for taking care of the basketball. We know this. They even lowered their turnover rate in the playoffs compared to the
Have
regular
they still?
season. Yeah, right. Let's kind of update that after game 1. But it was such an interesting point that you actually raised in the episode we recorded that you won't find in my feed. We'll find in yours. Damn, that was so dumb. Well, because you did raise the point of, look, this is a team that protects the ball a great deal going up against the team that's best at just forcing turnovers. How is that going to look like? And what's interesting to me in game 1 was just how lackadaisical they were with the ball, which is just very much not Indiana. And some of it, I think, was just nerves. Like these are the finals after all. And like Obi Toppin, I think was it 3 turnovers in the first half, or like within
2 of
like,
which were like passes to the stands, basically.
right?
Yeah.
And they were like, was it back-to-back possessions?
Yeah.
Maybe not, but like very
No,
close to
I
it.
think they were like 3 minutes apart, and he just like threw it. It ended up like in the backcourt. Yeah.
Right. And like, look, that's just not normal of them to make those type of mental mistakes. So like my takeaway is they won this game and they threw the ball away 24 times, which is very unlike them. So what does that mean going forward? Like, I know that's kind of leaning into your second question there, but like that to me is a major thing. Like the Pacers can they still keep on winning if they're going to turn the ball over to this extent, or are they just going to blow the pants off OKC if they start just not turning it over as they used to not doing? I mean, if anything, this makes the series even more intriguing to me.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're right about the nerves thing. There's not really a way to quantify it, but I went back and watched every single turnover that the Pacers had. And there was just like, yeah, there's some things where it's okay, Oklahoma City's hands are in there. I don't know how much I want to see Aaron Nesmith dribble in this series as an example. Right. But just like Myles Turner having just a couple like just tacky offensive fouls. He also, though, like some of his early turnovers, and I think most of his came in the first half, those felt like, okay, those are certainly controllable. So I think even Obi Toppin's, the ones you meant, like the 2 specifically, where he's just like the ball is like ends up in the backcourt. Right. I would like to probably see against this defense, the Thunder defense, you probably can't throw as many bounce passes, I feel like, especially to your bigs. But that all kind of feels controllable. OKC is going to force turnovers. Yeah. And if you sat here and told me, though, that the Pacers end up having the highest turnover rate of like any team in NBA Finals history, which I think is 21.8 when I looked it up on StatHead during game 1, I wouldn't be shocked. But like this is a team where you go back and you watch those turnovers. OKC caused a bunch of them with their pressure, but like there was at least, and look, to the Pacers' credit, they cleaned it up in the second half. They had 5 turnovers. So when you could say, well, the Thunder defense kind of faded at that point, sure. But like, I think a lot of what happened with the Pacers in the first half, those feel like more controllables than, OKC's defense is just inevitably going to do this. That's not to say, though, you got that game then when it was, OKC's defense, let's say they were responsible, like you really couldn't avoid half those turnovers. There's going to be a game where you might have like 18 to 20 turnovers that are also unavoidable because OKC locks in for a full 48 minutes. So it's good that you won that game, but I think that I don't think you can count on doing that again, would be my point.
Right.
So,
yeah, no,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was just going to echo whatever what you just said here. Basically, it's the unpredictability going into game 2 that I find exciting, because we also saw a poor shooting performance from OKC. So like, things are going to balance out. And what's going to be interesting in seeing is like, how do the scales match up when things start to balance in?
Yeah, and I think you could argue that favors the Pacers a little bit. Like even
Yeah.
OKC in transition outscored them 11-10 in game one, and that's with the Pacers committing 24 turnovers. That's insane. So coming out of this more of game one, I have to know, is Myles Turner just like better than Chet Holmgren? Or what's the story here? Man, so doesn't Myles Turner did not have the cleanest offensive performance. We already mentioned the turnovers. He ended up shooting 5 of 10 from the floor, 2 of 5 from 3. But man, that dude feasted on defense. The Oklahoma City was a -8 during his minutes, and listen to this: they shot 33.3% on twos with Myles Turner on the court. More on twos.
Yep.
And Chet Holmgren, to being mostly tongue-in-cheek here, I think Chet Holmgren's a fantastic player. He's got to go up to the basket or take the ball with more force. I don't know I know he didn't play against the Pacers this year during the regular season, but this is not the first time he's heard of Myles Turner. I got to give Myles Turner all the credit in the world on the defensive job he did for most of game one. That is like equal parts deterrent and then like just possession swallower. And he was great on the defensive end of the floor. And I'm just like, I don't expect the Thunder to struggle that much from inside the arc, but he was, when you were watching their drives or where they were pulling up from on their shots, like he was actively changing the way that they were thinking. And that's huge for the Pacers.
Even offensively, you couldn't really move off of him, or move him off the block. You really couldn't move him at all because, we remember the days when he came into the league and he was a skinny, 20-year-old. Now he's approaching 30. He's really added muscle. And I know people will laugh at this, but I think 4 or 5 years ago, it might not be that long, 3 or 4 years ago, he started doing yoga and started like his flexibility and his core work got so much better. He's very difficult to move offensively too. So like when he goes into the dunker spot, for example, good luck trying to like get him out or move him. That physicality is going to be a huge element for them, especially against Holmgren, who I like too a great deal, but like he's still so skinny. Like again, he's always going to be a finesse guy. He really is. And there's no issue with that whatsoever. Kevin Durant is a finesse player. Victor Wembanyama is a finesse player. So like there isn't anything inherently wrong with that. But it does mean that if you have an advantage and you can abuse that matchup, as currently Myles Turner seems to be capable of doing, you totally should.
The other number I want to throw out there is the Thunder as a team generated 0.64 points per possession when Myles Turner registered as a defender on Chet Holmgren. That is not good. 0.64 points per possession, for anyone wondering. I went back and I was watching too to see like how many of Chet Holmgren's own shots that Turner actually changed. I think the matchup data has him shooting 1 of 7 against Turner. It's actually like pretty accurate. There's probably like 1 or 2 shots where it's but like around the basket he just did. And I know you mentioned that Chet will probably always be a finesse player. I think that's probably to some extent true, but like you can go up with more, like be smarter about going up too. Yes. Like some of the angles he was using felt weird, but you can go up stronger. And
finesse players can dunk, Dan. I'm not saying
Kevin Durant can't dunk. Prime Kevin Durant for sure. He doesn't get to the rim anymore, but like that's something he had some pop.
Kevin Durant can still dunk. Yes, that's
no. I'm not saying he can't dunk. I'm saying he had more pop during his prime.
No,
if that's controversial, I don't know what's not controversial. So that's a matchup I'm going to be watching moving forward, and it like kind of bleeds into what I wanted to talk about when we're looking at like what are our questions, what are our adjustments. But I don't know who gets to go first because, like I said, I randomized it. It looks like it's going to be me. So here are my questions, Mort. I actually have 2. This leads into the turn, like it kind of steps on the toes of what we were talking about with Turner versus Holmgren. Does OKC need to go back? We'll start here to dual big, just because the other thing that you have to look at, Indiana in the fourth quarter grabbed 50% of its misses. And we didn't see Hartenstein or Holmgren for a single second together. And I'm just sort of wondering, now, OKC didn't get blasted when you're looking at the second chance points battle. I want to be clear. I think it was They lost 12-11. Again, 1 point margin. But like you're going to go into a second half and like even a little bit during the third quarter and let Indiana of all teams, which is not, I know they have Turner and Siakam, but they're not like this incredible offensive rebounding team, and you're going to let them grab over 40% of their own misses for the entire half. That's how you win the possession battle but lose the game. And I would probably like to see them, I personally think, again, I think Mark Daigneault has forgotten more about basketball in the past 5 seconds than I will ever know. But I'm wondering if we should see them go back to that look, just because if the offense is at times going to be a slog, getting your own misses, never, I mean, like also just grabbing defensive boards, that matters too. But if you can open up some offensive rebounding opportunities for yourself, like that's a way to kind of drum up then your possession average, which was just not up to snuff, especially in the second half.
Yeah, look, everyone came into this series basically asking the big question, oh, is this an Isaiah Hartenstein series at all? And when it was announced he wouldn't start, there was be the lineup change, everyone was like kind of saying, oh, yeah, that makes sense. This isn't a Hartenstein series. 9-9 in 17 minutes. He played pretty well. I think it's way too premature to kind of say, oh, yeah, he can't play in this series. He absolutely can. He absolutely needs to be the one to be the primary on Myles Turner because, again, Myles Turner is no longer 6'11", 210. He is 6'11", 250, and he knows how to use every damn inch of his body now, unlike what he did when he was a youngster. So you need veteran leadership and veteran, honestly, veteran physicality up front. That's not a term I think I ever used before, but I think it applies here. Like someone who just knows how to move people around, someone who's a big body who can match up. Like, I love Chet. He's not there, not quite yet at least. Hardenstein is. So whether he starts or not, that may not matter to me all that much. He just needs to play more than 17 minutes.
I agree, and I think it's probably going to happen. And I also think, because this was my second note, that kind of, again, bleeds into what we were just talking about. I'm wondering if offensively they can do more to get Shai some more separation earlier on in possessions, especially if you're going to have games where, all right, Chet doesn't have it tonight, or J-Dub is not going, what was he, 6 of 19 and 1 of 4 from 3. And where the Thunder seemed to have the most success on offense was Isaiah Hartenstein setting those really hard pancakey screens high, like against that Indiana pressure. And so at that point, Shai's either going to have that runway head of steam, or he's just, and I'd like to think I've watched Shai Gilgeous-Alexander play basketball once or twice, but I guess I forget like what type of on-ball thrust he could have because he's so good at like using that eclectic part of his game, like changing his pace so much. When you about someone being able to split defenders and just like zoom right through them, like that's the other thing that those high, like, okay, so Indiana's pressure's still there and he just still gets through. He just needs a sliver of daylight. And rather than having a guard come up and screen for him, even rather than having Chet come up and screen for him, Isaiah Hartenstein is going to get you some separation. And even if it's not a lot, it's going to be enough for Shai. And I think that might be doy, Dan, of course, but I just feel like when you look at the offensive game that this Thunder team had, and if you're going to have nights like you did, Shai wasn't, by his own standards, it took him 30 shots to get 38. Like, that's not a typical, like, efficient Shai game. Like, he's been more efficient. So I think that speaks to the importance of Hartenstein, too, is that he can help Shai Gilgeous-Alexander a lot offensively in this series with the types of screens he's setting. Again, especially if you're not getting sort of this, one of those detonations from a J-Dub or a Chet Holmgren. You're up. What do you got?
Look, so shooting variance, will that determine who wins the series and thus the chip? And I'm asking because the Thunder, we've talked about them as this very near perfect team all year long. The one thing that bothered me coming into the season somewhat, like honestly, still realizing that they are a juggernaut, and was, do they have enough high volume 3-point shooting? Be that on the bench, be that in the starting lineup, whatever. I felt like they needed a shooter, or maybe even a couple more shooters to get that, not just the percentage up, but the volume up. The volume was very important here. They took just 30 3-pointers in game 1. Indiana took 9 more, which isn't a ton, but they made more. They're more, I feel as though they move the ball better. They find shooters better. They're more, what's the word I'm looking for? Volatile from a spacing perspective. Whereas I think OKC, like, they're consistent, but they're never that team to just break out and go completely nuts from behind the arc. So my question is, what the hell happens here? Like, if the Pacers are going to keep hitting like 18 threes per game at 46%, and the Thunder don't really respond, and they're like in the mid-30s taking low-volume three-pointers, like, they will have to just grind their way to the free-throw line a ton or convert at a ridiculous rate at their twos. Their defense has to be in tune. They have to win the rebound battle. Like, everything has to go right for them to sort of even the scales here. So are we looking at something as potentially simplistic as shooting variance? Is this going to be the main thing?
I don't think it's unfair to boil a lot of this series down to that, especially if, I mean, again, I don't expect OKC to shoot, like, what were they, 12 of 21 at the rim or whatever it only was at the all series. But, like, if Myles Turner is going to be out there and cause those types of problems for you, and if you're also not going to have, like, these picture-perfect games from your most important supporting cast members, three-point shooting is a way to make up a lot of that gap. And you don't, I mean, like, sitting here, and I know he's become a better shooter. He's definitely a more willing shooter than he was a half decade ago. But you don't want to waste a game where you get 5 made threes from Lou Dort. And that's kind of what the Thunder frittered away. And so that's, I think, you know, also why I think it's more important is I don't know that people appreciate just, like, how good of a shooting team that Indiana can be. I know that they're not going to take the most threes in the league, but when you look at their lineup, who is their core five? Like, that started, like, who is their shooter that you trust the least on that? And then if the answer is Nembhard or Siakam or Turner, like, if that's your weak outside threat, you're in pretty damn good shape. And then you go to the bench and it's, all right, Ben Shepherd could be a little rocky, but Obi Toppin can get him up. We've seen
he
Benedict
5 threes. Yeah, absolutely.
Benedict Mathurin can, like he'll go through heaters as well. Yeah. So they do have more bankability when it comes to shooting, I think, than the Thunder do, who I think still have just the better collection of talent. But that's probably something that didn't get talked about enough, is that the Pacers, I think a lot of attention has been paid to their defensive improvement, as it should be. And then just like, oh, look at how fast they play on offense, and Tyrese Halliburton's the engine that drives it all, and Aaron Nesmith's been fun, and Pascal Siakam is able to operate in the muck, but also on the break. And it's, no, like, this team, like, they can kill you if they need to from beyond the arc.
Oh, yeah, they can. And the thing is, they can do it in half-court situations, too. This isn't a team that's just jacking threes in transition, too. They can set them up within their half-court schemes. This is something you and we talked about way back in, I want to say December or January, maybe, where we were talking about the Pacers as this team that was capable of slowing it down, just as they were able to just kind of hit the brakes and, like, or sorry, not hit the brakes, just speed things up. For them to be able to manufacture shots the way that they're doing, be that when the game is slowed down or when it's high paced, like, how do you guard that? How do you, like, okay, you can go up and say, oh, let's slow this game down. Let's force them into a half court game. They'll still manufacture the living fuck out of those situations.
Yeah, they're like, their offense is so dynamic, and sometimes I don't think I even fully appreciate it.
Right.
And so that's to say that about going up, like, the Thunder defense is the 10th circle of hell. I want to make that clear. And I think they made that clear, like, early on in game one. But when you were looking at the Eastern Conference Finals specifically, or even, look, I'll say this, going up against this Thunder defense, the stretches where a full-strength Boston squad was prone to going into, for the series, you might have preferred to see full-strength Boston versus OKC. But offensively, the Pacers it would have been the Pacers or maybe the Cavs for me, would have been the offense's best equipped to give this Thunder defense a real run for their money. And I mean, you don't want to see them have to get, like, down 15 points in the fourth quarter, and it's, another 99% win probability for their opponent. They got to come back and do it. At some point, you would assume they're going to run out of magic, but they haven't yet. And their just ability to adjust, and it's death by, like, 1,000 cuts, but I'm not talking about, like, necessarily the actual off-ball movement, although there's plenty of that. It's just, what do you need from them on offense? And they'll most likely find a way to give it to you. They will figure it out, maybe not right away, Maybe not for the entire game, but as the game and the series goes on, they will figure it out.
Yeah. It kind of dawned on me. We had this thing back in Phoenix when you said 7 seconds or Shaq. Like you could get the quick Steve Nash shot. If that did materialize, you could go to Shaq in the half court setting. There's no one pacer you can say that about. You can't go 7 seconds or Siakam. Like, you can, but you can also go in every other direction. So they have this uncanny ability to go 7 seconds or, well, we'll figure it out.
And it might be like, is it more like 4 seconds?
4 seconds or we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And that is such a daunting thing to go up against, regardless of who you are. I mean, look, and side note, we're talking about like schematics and we're talking about all the adjustments and whatnot. This could not, from an entertainment perspective, be a better start to a series. This game one had fucking everything. Everything. It was a gorgeously executed game. I know the Thunder missed a bunch of shots. I know the Pacers turned the ball over 16 million times. And yet, that didn't take away from the factor of enjoyment that we all had watching this game. We all, in unison, were like, oh, this is basketball porn. This was great. And for us to talk about all the avenues they can still improve upon just suggests to me even further, this series could go long, and we'd all be better for it.
I hope it has game one done. I had Thunder in 5. You had Pacers in 6. Does game one?
No, not Pacers in 6. Thunder in 6.
Thunder in 6. Excuse me. I think I had to write something immediately after, and I said this series. It was bold predictions for the rest of the series. I just said this series is going 7 because we deserve it to go 7 after seeing 2 5-game finals. But I do think this doesn't change my opinion that I really do think the Thunder are inevitable this year and maybe moving forward. I really do believe that. But I continue to have, even when I think that I fully appreciate relative to consensus the Pacers enough, they continue to show me that I do not. And that was probably my biggest takeaway from game one, is that you can say there's a lot of things OKC can clean up, and you will be right. There are things that Indiana can still clean up as well, too.
Yeah. Look, I'm an old grouch who can't wait for the season to end just because I'm tired personally, but I want this series to go as long as humanly possible because
give me 8 more games of it somehow.
Right.
I'm here for it.
I don't care. Like, just extend it if you want to. Like, let's go best of 15. It's fine. It's this because these are the kind of games where fatigue and like a long season, all that goes out the window when you actually watch the game. And when you're sitting there late at night, for me at least, I'm just sitting there going, oh yeah, this is special. And that's the feeling you want.
And the final thing I'll say is what I think is making me a little giddy, not to be confused with Josh Giddey. The 2 coaches that we have in this series, and Mark Daigneault and Rick Carlisle, they're true sickos that will #try shit.
Yep.
And they have this extended break in between games to figure out what they're going to try. And so, like, now that we're not in this every other day pattern, I'm sort of like that meme, like, coming around the tree and wiping my hands together for anyone who's watching on YouTube. I'm just like, what are we going to see? Is it we're telling the Thunder to go bigger? Do they just bench Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein and have J-Dub play center again?
Case on Wallace at center? Sure.
Right.
Why not?
Everyone's like, Case and Wallace probably needs to play less. And Mark Daigneault's like, fuck you. He's playing 45 minutes in game 2, probably. Yeah.
Alex Caruso at point guard. Let's go nuts. Absolutely. No,
Bring Shai off the bench.
Yeah.
He's going for 6. He got MVP. He needs to get 6th man of the year.
No, but you're right, though. And that's the thing, because one of them is probably going to overcorrect on something as well. And then they're going to be, oh, shit. And then they're going to go back to the drawing board afterwards. Like, this is why I also always prefer to watch players who think the game out. That's why I'm such a big Luka guy, Jokic guy, like the guys who just on the fly read stuff and goes, oh yeah, I'm supposed to do A, but I have to do B because that's the best option I can read, at my own capability here. For me, I have to go this route instead. So when you combine that with coaches who are, as you said, true sickos, man, you just get the best fucking product out of it. And I realize it sounds like I'm fellatioing the NBA right now, but look, I genuinely believe this is great for the product. It's great for the interest. yeah, it's two small market teams. I don't give a fuck. It's great basketball. Isn't that the whole point?
Honestly, I haven't seen anything since leading into the series. I saw something about the market stuff. And I don't know. I guess I'm pleasantly surprised. I didn't think of it, but like I haven't seen a whole like, oh, is this like that game one? You said it was a perfect start to the series. That's actually part of why. Even if you want to dismiss the people that talk about the market stuff, it gets talked about. There probably is some impact on the bottom line or viewership. I don't know. I don't really care. But like, if you were just sort of choppering in and haven't watched any of the NBA playoffs or didn't have an allegiance or any interest in either of these two teams, and you sat through most or all of game one, as long as you sat through, like, I'm sure a bunch of people turned it off when OKC went up 15 in the fourth quarter. They were like, sweep or something is coming. That was a perfect opening game because it disproved so many preconceived notions, including some of our own, but including that larger one of just like, there was the one about the lack of star power in this series, which is just like, yeah, Tyrese Halliburton is built different. He's a psychopath, and the Pacers
he's
are in there.
Overrated. Remember, Tyrese Halliburton is so overrated.
Can I pour some cold water on that though? I like it as having a chip on his shoulder or for us to make jokes and talk about. When you do the math, it was like less than 12 players that called him overrated.
You've said this before, and it's totally valid. I just love throwing that out there because it just seems so preposterous now. And it's gotten a whole lot of attention. And look, if he needs that to feed off of that, who am I to judge? That's fine. Well, if you need that to give us that type of performance, like late in games, go nuts,
I'm wondering
man.
I think the Ringer ranked him. I don't know if they were doing I didn't actually look at the list, but the Ringer had him like the 5th best player in the league or the 7th best player in the league right now. So I think the overrated conversation is actually going to get more widespread because of it. So that's it. He'll have plenty of motivation then, because I'm sure that stuff is fluttering around out there, but he is having, this might be captive of the moment type deal. I don't know that I've ever seen just like a more clutch postseason run. We've seen clutcher shots, although not many at this point. He just made one in the finals, but like this is a generational clutch performance from him across the entire postseason.
Yeah, like I'm thinking back to Mike, and even Mike didn't have this many moments in the same year. Like collectively, okay, Mike is like far ahead, but in the same year, I don't think so. Like am I forgetting someone? Like, is there anyone who was that clutch? Like Jamal Murray had major performances, but that wasn't clutch, right? Like that wasn't.
Damian Lillard's had like 2 series winners, which is kind of crazy.
That's true.
It's like that's up there for sure.
But those are still different years. Which okay,
like you said,
you said it. Series enders though. That's fair. That's a difference than just a game ender.
Honestly, they proved to be like era ending for those teams. Remember what happened to the Rockets and the Thunder after Lillard hit those shots?
Yeah, now the Thunder are taking it all back. You just got to trade Paul George, man. That's the recipe. So next year, if that's the Sixers mission now. Get off the Paul George contract. You'll be in the finals in about 12 months. It's fine.
Mort, do you have anything else to add, or would you like to tell our subscribers or our non-subscribers who are going to get on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the whole nine, and subscribe already and rock with us forever and ever and ever and always, where they can find you and all the fantastic work that you do?
Yes. So when I remember to upload, you can find my stuff over at the NBA podcast. I also do a Danish podcast called Buzzer Beater, and I write for Forbes and Yahoo Sports. And you can just type my name into Google and those things will pop up, or you can find me at Blue Sky at MSJ NBA. I'm not that super active anymore on social media, which frankly feels pretty nice, honestly.
That's a bad way to. I'm just gonna let you know that's a terrible way to promote your social media.
I know. I'm sorry about that, but like I'm still there occasionally, and when I am, it's always with enthusiasm, even though I say dumb shit once in a while.
I am on social media like a true superhero, so you can come follow me wherever you're on social media. Until next time, and as always, leave you with the one. Shout out to the one, the only, the player who might be signed and then rolled out in Game 2 of the finals by one of these teams. Who knows, Mr. Frank Ntilikina.